Cowboy State Daily Show with Jake. Joining us, U.S. Congresswoman Harriet Hageman. It's not quite the landslide vote the Epstein file thing was. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But you did bring Joint Resolution 130 across the finish line. Barely. Thanks for all your heavy lifting there. I know, it was close. 2 measly votes. It overturned a Biden-era attack on coal producers like Wyoming, canceling the Buffalo field office's RMP. It's good news for Wyoming and certainly good news for Powder River Coal. Congresswoman Hageman, nice job. That had to be a lot of work.
And the moment that this RMP came out during the Biden administration, I vowed that we were going to overturn it one way or another, and we succeeded in doing it legislatively pursuant to what's called the Congressional Review Act. And why that's so significant is, number one, this is Congress's effort to reassert its Article 1 authority to actually be the body that makes the laws and to take that power back away from these unelected bureaucrats and administrative agencies. It also is incredibly important. This is only the second time in history since the CRA was adopted in the 1990s that it has been used against a document such as the Resource Management Plan. And so we did it a month or so ago with the Miles City RMP. That was the first time, and that is the Montana side of the Powder River Basin, obviously, which has a small portion of the coal, the vast majority of the coal being in Wyoming. Now we have overturned the Buffalo RMP, and the agency will not be able to adopt something substantially similar at any time in the future.
That's what I was going to ask you. The way you went about it makes it less likely we're just going to flip it back if the administration changes. This has become a volleyball. It's going to be much harder to just cancel it out.
Well, it is that's exactly right, because under the CRA, if Congress acts to nullify a regulation or a rule, then that agency cannot come back and just adopt it again. So They have to do something that is substantially different than this. Because this was just a blanket moratorium, we're not going to see those kinds of blanket moratoriums in terms of Wyoming's coal production. But the other thing that is also important is that it was a federal district court judge in Montana that had really encouraged the administration to adopt this kind of a blanket moratorium, because he was demanding that they address climate change and global warming by essentially shutting down the largest coal field in the entire United States of America. So by Congress acting, you're not going to have a federal district court judge that can now come back in and say, well, Congress intended either through NEPA or something else to force them to consider greenhouse gases and climate change, because we have now spoken. And we are the ones that get to make the law, not the judges and not the administrative agencies. And so regardless of what that radical rogue judge does, he cannot nullify what Congress has done.
House Joint Resolution 130, as we said, just barely passed, not without strong opposition. Opposition being kind of on two fronts: climate policy. Obviously, there's those who believe burning coal is bad for climate. We think it keeps the lights on. But there's also this argument I see, which I'm not understanding. Maybe you do. Representative Jared Huffman, Democrat, California, saying this is giveaways to wealthy interests at the expense of working families. What are they just grabbing at straws? What is that argument, Congresswoman?
Well, Jared Huffman is not known for presenting rational arguments. How about if I put it that way? So it is just part of their mantra of that we are, giving billions of dollars in tax breaks to the wealth to billionaires. It's just more of their nonsense. They don't necessarily believe that their arguments have to make sense. They just make them because they use them to raise money. They raise them as clickbait. They can try to convince people out there that they're fighting against the oligarchs and they're fighting against the evil coal companies and all of that. But none of it makes sense. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm thinking of putting coal miners back to work so they can support the family. I mean, yeah. All right, let's
things that's always been so silly about this entire argument is that we're clearly able to adapt to almost anything that comes our way, and we're incredibly resilient, not only in the United States but worldwide. One of the arguments that he made, I believe it was yesterday in one of our hearings, he put in a document. They're now claiming that global warming is going to cause a new ice age. So if you remember, all of this weather-related hysteria and nonsense started in the 1970s with the idea that we were all going to freeze to death.
Yes.
It was a coming ice age because of how we had treated the planet, and oh my God, we're going to die a horrible, horrible death. Well, then that didn't happen. So then they went to global warming, and then that didn't happen because the temperatures didn't do what they really needed them to do. So then they converted it to climate change, and anything, if you stub your toe, apparently it's caused by climate change. And now they're back to, because of global warming and climate change, we're going to have a new ice age. So maybe they just want to kind of dust off the old headlines, is why they're going this route.
Yeah, if you want to refute that, you can have on our Don Day. He was just on before you, your guest meteorologist. Bring him to one of those Senate hearings or one of those House hearings, and he can talk about climate change. I want to talk about this, maybe not the sexiest topic, but it is going to be really crucial in the coming decade, at least. Escalating tensions between the upper and lower basin water users, missed deadline. We're talking about the Colorado River Compact. Wyoming needs an ability to protect its water rights. They may be threatened by downriver users, and we're talking about the Green River, I think we can say, but they call it the Colorado River. It's huge. It is going to be a legal mess, and you've got some experience in it.
I do. I've actually studied the Colorado River Compact quite extensively, and the fact is that it's kind of sad that the very first interstate compact that was ever written was on a river system of that magnitude and that complication. It was agreed to in 1922. The Congress approved the compact in 1922. It was the first effort really for states to come together and reach an agreement on an interstate water system. We have the upper basin states, which are Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Utah, and the lower basin states being California, Nevada, and Arizona. We've been fighting over this river and the water in it for decades and decades and decades. One of the problems was when they wrote that compact, they assumed that the river ran about 15 million acre feet. It probably, on average, runs substantially less than that. But that's how they divided the river, essentially 7.5 million acre feet to the lower basin states and 7.5 million to the upper basin. Of that 7.5 million, the state of Wyoming is entitled to 14%. We have never fully used our 14% that we're entitled to. I would argue that that is not a delivery obligation compact. It's a non-depletion compact. That's the way that they wrote it. In other words, we're entitled to use our water before we're required to meet any kind of a demand at lease ferry, which is where the cutoff point and where the measurement is made for water. So this gets very, very complicated. But here's the reality of the situation. California has essentially the same water infrastructure in place today with 40 million people that they had in the 1960s with 16 million people. California leadership, California governors, California legislators have completely and totally abdicated their responsibility for their own citizens to actually be developing the water infrastructure that they need to meet their demand. So they continuously look to us. They continuously look to the Colorado River Compact as somehow going to save them, and it's not. What California has got to do is, number one, they have a couple of options of expanding existing reservoirs, such as Shasta, but they also need to look at constructing reservoirs. And there have been programs and projects on the table for quite some time, but they can't ever get them approved because the leadership, the Democrat leadership in California is just such an abject failure at everything that they do. But they also need to look at desalination. You know, Israel, they do not rely upon their neighbors for their water. They have perfected desalination. California is perfectly positioned to be able to take advantage of that technology. But again, their leadership is such a failure. They want to spend their money on stupid things such as the climate change and global warming and social justice issues, rather than actually providing water to their citizens. And what happens? Their houses burn to the ground. They have fallowed literally 1 million acres of some of the prime farm ground in the entire United States of America, taking irrigation water off so that they can send it to their municipalities. They just make really bad policy decisions. And so we're caught up in the middle of it because we are the headwaters for the Colorado River system.
Yeah, and maybe we need to just build a higher dam down there at the Flaming Gorge. I don't know, but it's certainly salinations, that's hard to say, taking the salt out of the ocean, that was maybe not as well along feasible 10 years ago, but it's made great strides recently. Israel's doing it, man. They are ahead of it. That should be an option for California. I mean, the fact is, we're talking about an old compact, 1922, written at a time when California and Arizona are now becoming thirstier and thirstier and thirstier. And it's coming to a head. Okay.
We have to work through the issues on the compact. I'm not suggesting otherwise. We still need to deal with that. And we need to protect Wyoming's interests. But at the same time, if you're going to provide a long-term solution to address water shortages in Arizona and California, they both need to develop additional sources. They need to build dams.
Yeah. One last thing, boy, this I'm kind of on Senator Barrasso with this. I think there's more important things the American public's worried about, like healthcare and inflation and stuff like that. But these Epstein files, my goodness, everywhere you go, it's in the news constantly. For you, was this about a political thing? Is this important politically? Democrats want it, Republicans want it, don't want it? Or was this really transparency and seeking justice, perhaps, for victims? What is the reasoning behind your vote in the Epstein files?
Because we need to put this behind us. The Oversight Committee has actually been releasing the documents. This was political. This was a political vote. People moving machinations behind the scene, trying to manipulate and maneuver things. But the reality is that the Oversight Committee has released over 65,000 pages of documents. And what have we learned? Just exactly what I knew before they started releasing the documents, which is that Jeffrey Epstein was a leftist. He was a Democrat. He was aligned with the Democrats. The Democrats were aligned with him. His donations went to Democrats. He hung out with Democrats. And the documents are proving that. I mean, here we have Stacey Plaskett, the delegate from the Virgin Islands, is texting with him during a hearing in an effort to try to attack Donald Trump. Stacey Plaskett was his fixer. She was his attorney. If there's anybody who knew about what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, it was Stacey Plaskett. Yeah. So for the Democrats to stand up and thump their chest and scream and yell and jump up and down and, oh my gosh, we're going to find all this stuff on Trump. There isn't going to be the stuff on Trump that they think's in there. Trump and Epstein were not friends. They were acquaintances. They ran in the same circles, but they were not friends. But he was an awful good friend to a lot of Democrats, gave him a lot of money. And I think what you're going to see in these documents is more evidence of how embedded he was with the Democrat Party and how they looked the other way. They knew he was a pedophile. They knew he was a pedophile. He was convicted in 2008. They knew he was a pedophile, and they still hung out with him because he gave them money.
Yeah, regarding Plask, I know there was talk and effort to maybe censor her. Is that gone anywhere?
Well, we tried the other night, and I'm pretty angry that it didn't succeed. She sits on the Intelligence Committee. She shouldn't be there. She's not trustworthy. She's just flat not trustworthy. She's not even a voting member of the body because she represents a territory. She's not even a full member of Congress. Right. But they got her on that committee, and it didn't go anywhere. And I think that there was some maneuvering going on behind the scene that I want to get to the bottom of because I'm pretty angry about it. She needed to be censored. What she has done, like I said, we even had Kash Patel before our committee a couple of months ago, and one of them had the audacity to ask him, the FBI director, have you talked to Epstein's attorneys? And my response was, well, you sit next to one of them. Right. You won't sit next to a woman who was his fixer. You sit next to one of his attorneys. You want to go talk to his attorneys? Go talk to his attorneys. She's on your side. I mean, this whole thing is just a way to try to smear Trump and deflect attention from the failures of what they're doing back here.
Yeah, and we do need to put it behind us as a nation and put it behind us because we're heading to Thanksgiving. I don't want to leave you on an angry note, Congresswoman Hageman. What are you doing for Thanksgiving next week?
My mother is going to be 102 years old tomorrow.
Oh. Wow.
So happy birthday to my mom. And I will be home in Wyoming for Thanksgiving next week, and I will be able to spend some time with her. I got to do that last week, and I was able to see her. I was in Goshen County and Sheridan and all over, but I spent some time with my mom, and I'll see her next week as well. I'm
glad you're getting back on Wyoming soil. They say Sydney Sweeney has good genes. The Hageman family, 102. Wow. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you.